Football, sliced and diced, with Sedgemoor FM and Somerset FA.
Welcome to Sliced and Diced, where we're having open and honest conversations about local football. I'm Kerry Miller, sports historian, and this is Neil Fellows from Sedgemoor FM, and Paul Coltman, marketing consultant with the Somerset FA.
Thanks for Kerry for doing that. Before we get into what Kerry's doing about history of local football, let me just say very quickly, if you're a fan of a club based in Somerset, you're a player, club official, or you're involved with local football in any way, you want to subscribe to the channel so that we can keep you up to date with all of the latest uploads as and when they happen. On this channel you'll also get local interest stories as well as the occasional music video too. Kerry, thanks for joining us today. Tell us how did you get started in local football?
Well, local football around here, I got started when I moved to Bristol in '84. I was already a referee, although I hadn't refereed for some years, because I got involved in non-league football and being a Watford supporter for sort of 15 years.
We found them!
Yeah. For 15 years I went to every game, home and away, so that was a grounding. But when I moved to Bristol, I immediately started refereeing, and it went from there.
Yeah, cool. And you're also a journalist as well, you mentioned in the intro. So what? How did you get into journalism?
Well, it was through being a referee that I made lots of contacts around the county, and I started writing for Team Talk magazine not long after that, and I got involved with Keynsham Town as programme editor, and then later on Bristol Manor Farm as programme editor. So I enjoyed going to both those places. When I was at Keynsham, I met a guy called James Wright, who was and still is the stats guy for the non-league paper, and he asked me if I would be interested in writing for Team Talk, and then, which I did, and then subsequently a job became available full-time working down at North Curry on the levels, and so we moved from Bristol to North Curry, and that's how it began.
Yeah. So
I was going to say, who are you writing for now?
Now I've gone full gamut, because I'm now with non-league paper, just on a freelance basis whenever they need me. But from the Team Talk situation, I began writing books, histories more to the point, of clubs. First one was Tiverton Town, just across the border. I've done several others, and when I had a book published in '95 on the history of football grounds, that became a national bestseller, which led me to get my first job in newspapers.
Yeah, I mean, talking to you as I bumped into you first of all at Bridgewater United last season, and you'd started talking to me about the history of some of the local clubs and things. I was fascinated by that, so that's why I wanted you to come on the podcast today to explain the other things that we've been working on together.
Yeah.
So what Kerry and I have been working on recently, Paul's not been around, you've been busy, you've been doing other things, while the bosses are away, I started playing. And so Kerry's kind of joined us and is going to be putting together some podcasts on local football clubs with us, looking at the history of some of those clubs. I find it really fascinating, because we started with Taunton. We'll release that video next week, but we started with Taunton Town, and you were just talking to me about the history of the club, and we got in the car and we drove down to various sites around Taunton, and it's kind of fascinating to see like how the town's evolved and how the clubs evolved.
With football as the central point of that discussion.
Of our discussion, yeah. But what I found really interesting in talking with Kerry was how integral rugby was in the development of sport in Taunton, and how the two things actually split away.
Split at some
There was this
point,
thing called the Dribbling Code, which you introduced me to.
Yeah, the dribbling code and soccer, which, as most people now know, is where the word is the word comes from association.
Yeah.
Short soccer, and I'm sure I said to Neil that in the early days rugby was called football and football was called association,
Yeah.
mainly because rugby football was established far earlier than the dribbling code.
Yeah.
Back in the 1875 is the formation date for several rugby clubs around the area.
You'd remember that, wouldn't you? Now?
Way before my understanding of sport or anything.
Well, that's so far away that only a couple of years before government had put a bill in place to stop people putting small children up chimneys
Yeah.
as chimney sweeps. That's how long ago it was.
Instead, they put them on rugby pitches.
Yes. Yeah.
Different sort of entertainment.
So the Football Association really didn't get a foothold in Taunton until round about the turn of the century, although the first league started in the 1890s, mid-1890s, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, leagues in rugby didn't start till 1980, so they had a head start on that one.
I'm guessing that within that there'd be references to certain cups like the Robarton Cup, which are sort of renowned across the county. Very, very old cup competitions. So I'm guessing stuff like that comes up quite a bit in the.
Yeah, and you do quite a lot of because it was a charity cup back in the very early days. A lot of people liked to be associated with it.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of rugby players and rugby administrators got involved in football to play Robarton Charity Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what the plan is then is that over the next few months we're going to do a few more of these videos. Obviously Taunton next week we'll release that one, but in the future we're going to be looking at other clubs and the history of how those clubs came together. Again, go back to Taunton. One of the things I thought was really fascinating in that discussion was the Taunton town only really formed itself in 1947, I think, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
So you look at how successful other clubs are, and like the Premier League clubs or Championship clubs, how long they've been established, and yet Taunton's still kind of like only kind of half their age, if you like.
They're very green, yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, they're now achieving the best level of position in the league that they've ever had. So it's great to see the club growing.
Within the series, are you gonna look at in more depth like the history of the Robarton Cup and other bits and pieces like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should. Yeah, we should do that. I mean, it's local sort of cups as well as the clubs and things like that. It all comes together. I think.
It definitely is. We've spoken a lot over various podcasts about connecting the dots, and I think this, for a lot of people that play football nowadays, they're not going to know where it started and how it started. They just turn up and play football, but they won't know a lot about their clubs and their competitions.
No, it's that for those of us that still care about cup football. There's an awful lot that don't, and you can see that with some of the attendances with cup football as opposed to league football. They drop alarmingly, which 20 years ago it was the reverse. And I've blamed it several times, and I will continue to blame it on Alex Ferguson when he pulled Manchester United out of the FA Cup, and then the floodgates opened and everybody started doing it, just pulling out of cup and calling important cup competitions Mickey Mouse Cups, which really does great on historians like
shout out for Sir Alex there. So.
Enjoy your retirement.
He's done lots for football and not so much for football.
Yeah, exactly.
No, definitely.
So Kerry's also joining Sedgemoor FM's Saturday afternoon sports show team. Because we're
as bad as me, you get allowed to say no.
At the end of the season, we're going to say between us we can top as many games as you. So Yeah, so Saturday afternoons we're giving you a microphone. You're off out to. How are you feeling about that, Kerry?
I've done some broadcasting back in the day. I'm looking forward to it. This Saturday, for example, Yeovil play Didcot in the FA Cup third qualifying. Third qualifying. So you're one away from the biggie. That I'm looking forward to very much. I was there for the previous round when they beat Stoneham 7-1. It was a good game for all that. Stoneham was still in it, but just before half time. And I'm particularly impressed with what they've done at Yeovil because having gone there a couple of times a season work-wise over the past 4 or 5 years, the place was falling to pieces, and it's only about 30 years old, the ground. But the new regime has come in. They painted everything that stands still, and they've got new fan zones outside with all manner of things, and it's looking good.
I was going to say, we went down and saw Martin
and
did a podcast, and while we were there, he kept reminding us that as soon as he'd finished recording in his suit, it was boiler suit on, paintbrush in hand, and he was getting out there and painting what needed painting. So I think you're right in saying that it has been all hands to the pump, and they've been working hard and from the top down. And I think when you've got it from the top down, people can see that there's genuine change, and I think people are buying into it.
Yeah, I mean there were 3,500 there for the St Albans game. And that was that was considering it's two divisions below the league, and that was more than several league clubs got.
But you compare that to you look at the numbers that Dulwich had when they were doing the Peter Crouch documentary and things like that. That 3,500 without cameras there, without a superstar running the show. That's good numbers for non-league football.
Well, considering that it's just down the road from Palace, and Dulwich Hamlet is a very old club.
Yes.
Just coincidentally, briefly I worked in London back in the 70s. I used to go there every Monday night because they played Monday night midweek games, and that was great fun. That was great.
It can't be a game under lights.
Monday night game at the old Dulwich Hamlet, one of the great non-league grounds, which sadly is not there now.
One of the things we're doing with Sedgemoor FM, as you mentioned, what you're doing, Kerry, and coming and joining the team on a Saturday afternoon, but we are looking at how we support grassroots football and what's going on in around here locally. So we're covering Bridgewater games, but trying to get down to Yeovil, Taunton and Weston as well, to give more of a coverage over what's going on in Somerset.
Obviously as the big clubs in the area, but I think also picking up the county leagues for men and women, the sort of junior leagues and youth football, as well as all the other disciplines, trying to cover as much as we can.
So if you want us to come and cover your club in terms of the history and get Kerry down there to look at your town and your club, then pop in the comments who you are and what club you're following, and we can take a look at perhaps doing that in the future. Thanks for joining us today, Kerry.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel, and if you want to get extra content and support the channel, then check out the Patreon link in the description.